In a small southeastern town in Pennsylvania was a Christmas tree farm. Each year, excited families gathered, bundled up in their warmest clothes, and sipped on hot cocoa and mulled cider at the entrance. Their paths were paved with twinkling lights and hollow gift-wrapped boxes topped with ribbons and bows. This year was no different. Fresh snow fell in heavy flakes, dusting Douglas firs, and inside the home of the family who owned the farm was a young girl in Rudolph pajamas with a cup of cocoa of her own. The fireplace kept her toasty as she watched the snow through the window pane, and Frank Sinatra's Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas played on the television. Her mother entered the living room with a pair of snow pants clutched in her hands. They had struck a deal. If the girl wore appropriate pants, she could keep on the Rudolph shirt. After slipping on her red coat and mittens, the girl and her mother stepped onto the porch. A wreath made of holly hung on the door, and her father, on break from working the checkout, waited with a sled. While her father pulled her along, she observed the trees. Some were beautiful and full, while others were thin and sparse. But the largest stood in the center, as if nature knew it commanded the attention of not just the people, but the surrounding inferior trees. A man with a bushy brown beard sawed rigorously at a tree larger than himself. Sometimes the girl felt sad to see the trees cut down, because running around the farm and seeing so many of them made her feel like Christmas would never end. But then she thought of how pretty they would look in everyone's living rooms, with shiny ornaments and popcorn garland, of how delighted Santa would be to see the family's personality reflected on the branches. When the tree the bearded man was cutting hit the ground, a child's scream rang out. The father stopped and stared at his wife, while another woman yelled a name none of them heard. On top of the hill were a group of children. Sleds raced down the slope, hues of green, blue, red, and yellow reflected off the snow. Holiday lights were wrapped around larger trees that would withstand the holiday season and outlive even the youngest child on the farm. "Can I go?" the girl asked, gazing longingly at the zooming sleds. Her mother and father allowed her. How were they to know the evil bestowed upon their land that was usually full of winter whimsy? With sled in tow, the girl didn't head straight for the hill. She weaved between the maze of trees with her mother yelling after her, "Be mindful with that sled, there are people around." A young boy ran past her, pointing at a scrawny tree, declaring it perfect for his household. Because every tree deserves a home on Christmas. The girl thought it was very sweet, and that he was for sure on Santa's nice list. Then, the woman who had yelled for her child moments ago passed by, more than worried, frantic. And this time, the girl heard the name as the woman repeated, "Jared," in a shaky voice. In that short time between the sweet boy wanting the ugly tree and the mother calling for her son, the girl had a peculiar feeling that something unsettling was afoot. At that very moment, another tree dropped, along with the boy's enthusiasm and hand. What the boy had just seen didn't make any sense. One minute, he saw a girl by the largest tree, and the next, she was gone, like she'd been dragged away. The knitted cap she wore was lying on the snow. Of course, the girl who lived on the farm saw none of this. Her attention had been on Jared's crying mother, but her interest shifted to the tree. Was it watching her? The longer she stared, the more she thought the gaps in its branches resembled a face, but not a kind face. Now, the boy was crying, "I don't want a tree, I want to go home." The girl thought that the face must have scared him as well. Passing the tree, she saw a pink knit cap. Its fluffy ball hung on by a thread, and she didn't know why, but that frightened her even more. So she hurried to the hill. On top of the hill, she readied her sled and sat in it carefully. "Do you need a push?" a blond boy asked, and she nodded, thankful for his assistance. When his bare hands touched her back, she thought about offering him her mittens, but before she could, she was flying down the hill. She felt like she was on a rocket ship with how fast she was going, and for a moment, she forgot all about the tree with the face. That's how she spent the next half hour, hauling the sled up the hill for 20 seconds of pure bliss on the way back down. Little did she know that near the register, her parents spoke to Jared's hysterical mother as they waited for the police. The girl's parents felt awful, but they thought the kid was just messing around. It wouldn't be the first time a child caused a stir by hiding from their parents. But then, a single mom of 3 came up with 2 of her daughters. The third one had gone missing after they cut down their tree. They had been searching for her in her bubblegum pink knit cap ever since. Now the girl's mother was worried and just about to excuse herself when she saw her daughter was no longer on the hill or making her brave trek up it. There was only one place she thought her daughter would be now. Without a word to her husband, she sprinted for the trees. Meanwhile, the girl found herself surrounded by beautiful pines, spruces, and firs. What was she thinking before? Trees don't have faces, and it was nearly Christmas. There was no reason to be afraid. Besides, she loved looking at them, even though they already had one. The sled made a path as she dragged it along, scuffing the snow and dispersing green needles in its wake. Bright white lights resembling icicles hung on the wooden fence. Lamps shined on top of red and white candy cane poles. As she ventured further into the grove, the light faded into a far-off glow, and another tree hit the ground from somewhere in the distance. The girl thought she was alone until she saw a blue coat on someone around her age. However, before she saw his face, he gasped and fell into the snow. "Dad!" the boy in the blue coat yelled before being ripped out of sight behind a tree. Not just any tree. The one with the face. The girl's breath was uneven and came out in puffs of mist. As she neared the tree, wanting to help the child, she noticed tiny red specks on the left side of it, the side the boy in the blue coat had disappeared. When she recognized the colorful snow as droplets of blood, she got so scared that she froze. Meanwhile, the girl's mother passed customers, ignoring their request for assistance. Another tree fell and another child cried out. She prayed that she wouldn't hear her baby next. If the girl had more sense, she would have run. Instead, she inched toward the red flakes. The whack of an axe sounded from too many trees away to count or see. More footfalls crunched in the snow, and her fear was so strong that she thought the tree had grown feet. That is, until a boy with red hair came into view with one of the decorative boxes. His eyes widened. "Don't tell anyone," he said unkindly. He didn't need to explain himself to her. Not everyone grew up in some fancy farm mansion, he thought. The girl had no interest in the gift-wrapped box. There was nothing inside anyway. Even if there were, he could have it as long as he moved away from the tree. "We should go," she said, stepping away. But it was too late. The boy was about to tell her to mind her business when something grabbed his ankle, or he thought something did. But he didn't see anything. Gravity was ripped out from under him, and the box flew from his hand. The girl watched his wild eyes as the tree sucked him under, devouring him. It was then that her mother found her in her half-zipped coat and Rudolph's nose peeking out from underneath. However, the girl didn't notice. All she saw was the face in the tree, and the empty box that lay in the snow as a warning to all greedy children.